Okay. Hi everyone, I'm Raina Faust. I'm an OT. I work predominantly with pediatrics here at Rockcastle Regional Hospital, and this is one of my colleagues, Christy Napier, and she is a speech language pathologist that works with me as well. Thank you to everybody that sent your questions in. We kind of didn't know how to structure it, so I said, why don't we just do a question and answer? I thought it would be a good way to get you all involved and kind of give us an idea of what we should talk about, just because there's a million different things we could talk about. So we'll try to answer them to the best of our ability. We didn't know a lot of the ages on some of the questions, so we'll just kind of try to be general and do our best. So here we go. First, just looking at some of the objectives, it's just your all's questions that you sent us. We're going to talk about OT and speech in general, the ideas for trunk and core strengthening, do a little bit of handwriting and fine motor skill development. There was a hippotherapy question, and the decreasing rate of speech, as well as oral skills and feeding, and some app recommendations, and then ending with first steps. What is occupational therapy? That's a great question. I get that a lot. Really, for this presentation, we're kind of gearing it more towards kids. So we work with kids, all kinds of different diagnoses. Mostly, I would say, looking at activities of daily living. Play is a big ADL for kids, so we're going to talk about a lot of that. Increasing fine motor and gross motor skills. Just really overall life, and making sure that they can be as independent as possible and as successful as they.
Speech and language therapy, we evaluate, diagnose, and treat speech, language, cognitive issues, swallowing, voice, and fluency disorders. But as a whole, what we do is we strive to make effective communication a human right, accessible and achievable for all people, infants to elderly.
All right, so we're going to jump right into it. I'm going to talk first about increasing trunk and core strengthening. These first pictures, and what I'm going to talk about initially is our younger kiddos. They're not the best pictures. I tried my best to find some that kind of illustrated it well. No kids like tummy time, even as they get older, they don't like it. And so you really have to be creative in how you're going to get them to stay in it as long as possible, so you can do some of that good trunk and core strengthening. The first picture with the lady holding the baby is probably one of my favorite techniques. And one thing that we do, I do this even with my kids age 3 and 4 and 5, as long as I can pick them up. I'll hold them like that and carry them around and I'll bend over and have them pick stuff off the ground, or walk around, oh, let's go get something off the slide, because they don't realize they're on their bellies and that they're having to use those muscles to look out and reach and grab things. So it's a really good way to kind of distract them into doing it. The bottom picture, I use my leg all the time, just because they say to kind of use boppy pillows, but I found boppies, they're really soft, and our little ones, they kind of squish down into them. So using your leg is just kind of something you always have with you, and it's an easy tool to use just to kind of help work on some of that trunk and core strengthening. The picture above that is just a rolled up yoga mat. I don't know if you've got one at home. A towel roll works just the same, and I kind of like it better than a boppy pillow also, to work on some of that stuff in prone. The last picture is just a child on a wedge. You probably don't have that at home. If you do, that's awesome. But using a couch cushion works just the same, just to kind of get them working on their belly, doing some things like that. The next picture is kind of more for our older kids. The first one, it's an adult doing it, and then they're just laying on their backs, alternating arm and leg. And I call that one the dead bug. Kids just think it's funny. And it's also a good thing to do for crossing midline, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. You can get them to touch their knee, cross over, touch their knee, touch their foot. Get them to lift their head up. She's not doing it in the picture, but lift your head up and look at your knees so you're engaging your core. Planks and the Superman. I've got a pediatric core exercise program if anybody's interested. My information is going to be at the end because all of this is on there. But the plank, there's all kinds of ways you can make that fun. Oh, we're going to be pirates. We're going to walk the plank, and you can you can act like they're a plank, walk things up their backs. You're going to roll cars under them. Just being creative, anything. Something else also down at the bottom, he's doing the same thing as the dead bug, but he's just on his hands and his knees. Is also a good thing. It's actually really hard if you try it at home. Just some other things to talk about trunk and core strengthening. Just everyday play tasks. I'll go to my next slide here. Um, just be creative at home. Different things that you can use. It's really not complicated. Just if you're on the playground, you think, I see my little boy keeps turning around and laying on his belly and sliding down the slide feet first. It might not be that he's scared to slide. It might be that he just doesn't have that trunk strength to slide and sitting. You don't realize how much you have to use your core just to go down a slide. So going to a playground and just doing those everyday play tasks really can help just build your muscles in itself. I've got the body pillow on there. I'm not a big fan of it, but using a yoga mat or your leg works just as well. Anything on a therapy ball, you've seen couch cushions are some of my favorite things to use. Pillows, anything. I mean, you can use all of those for any kind of trunk strengthening to incorporate balance into. All right, we're going to move right into handwriting. This is one of my favorite things. They all make fun of me, but I get excited about it. The question was increasing accuracy and size, but I wanted to talk about just some different pencil grips initially and some things that might influence that. I put some pictures over here. The top one is a writing claw grip. The green one is I should remember that. A grotto grip, and the one in the middle is a stetro. I also put some other things on there about web space, and the one with the rubber band is just an easy way to get them to lay that pencil down in their web space. So, people stress how they hold their pencil a lot, and what it looks like. You want to have a tripod grasp. If it's not perfect, don't worry about it. Because sometimes, I don't hold my pencil perfect every single time. But just making sure if we can kind of get them in that habit initially, it will really help in the long run. Also, another way other than using a grip is just using smaller pencils or broken crayons. I've got a little guy. If you give him a big pencil, he is going to hold it in his entire fist, and he's going to write like that. But if you give him a broken crayon, he holds it perfect every time. Also looking at web space and positioning, that little rubber band trick is an easy thing that you can do at home. You can also I've seen people use nuts and like little nuts to put at the end of a pencil just to kind of weigh it back in their web space. Another thing is looking at your paper angle and your handedness. Some kids, if they're holding their pencil and they're really close to the end and they don't have their paper turned, I see this especially with my lefties, they can't even see what they're writing. And so the parents are like, well, their handwriting is horrible. And they come in and I watch them write something and it's like, they can't even see. So turn your paper and you've an easy way just to help without having to make big changes. So on to the increasing handwriting size and accuracy. And this was kind of a hard one because just, this is why evaluation is such an important thing. You don't know if it's due to just fine motor skills, it could be visual deficits or crossing midline or some other underlying issue that's going on. We kind of talked about the activities for crossing midline with the core task, but anything, I had a little girl that she'd come in and she'd start right in the middle of the paper, and so she'd always run out of room because she'd walk up to the chalkboard and she'd start right in the middle and write her name, and she could never fit it on there. She had a really, really long last name. But so just trying to work on things for that. If you have an OT, I would recommend talking to them if you think that's an issue. Or, being anything. Sidewalk chalk is a great thing to work on crossing midline because they're going to draw really big and just do those big exaggerated movements that can help work on that. Um, Leading into the next point, which is if you're worried about size, watch with your child when they write. A static versus a dynamic tripod grasp. Because I know some kids, when they write, that's why they write so big, because they're moving their whole arm. And they don't have that fine motor, just precision that we're looking for. When we as adults write, our arm doesn't move at all. We just move our hand. We barely even move our wrist. And so just kind of looking at them to see, are they moving their whole arm? And that's why when you're trying to get them to write smaller, they can't do it. So trying to work really on more fine motor skills initially and doing some really fine motor tasks before you really try to focus on that handwriting. I've put some other ideas over here on the side. Handwriting Without Tears is a great program. I know the schools use it a lot. And the wet, dry, try method, it's great because they really get just that like kinesthetic feedback and learn how to write their letters and just formation. Any kind of tracing task. I mean, I've had people that just, do the old school putting white paper on a coloring book and tracing things, pictures that your child might like. Graph paper is good for sizing. The Handwriting Without Tears lined paper is really good. Because it's there's two smaller lines that they can use to write, and it just gives them a better visual cue. Raised line paper is also, I've had a lot of success with that. The only thing is when you get those letters that hang below, like the G or the P, it's really hard to do. But I think just kind of giving a tactile cue like that will help. Make your own puppy paint or glue. You can do that. I do that with a lot of my kids, just trying to teach them to stay within the lines when they're coloring, just so that they have a tactile boundary to help them. Also, if you have an OT, just talk to them about, do we think this could be visual perceptual or visual motor deficit? And there's all kinds of different assessments that your OT can do to kind of rule out if it's just fine motor or if there's a visual component that you need to be addressing also. So on to fine motor skill development. I feel like I keep skipping around, but I'm trying to stay on track here. In-hand manipulation, finger translation. I see this with my younger kids all up into teens. It's really a skill that is kind of getting left behind just because we're going to so much technology. iPads are great, but I get my kids and they do this all the time, or they do this all the time. And so they really aren't using their hands as much as, we used to. So in-hand manipulation skills. You see your kids, they come in and they've got pencil marks or marker on their shirt because they've been at school and they can't use their fingers to readjust their pencil or their pen or whatnot, so they do this to fix it. That's one thing that I see a lot, and that's in-hand manipulation skills. Different things you can do for that. I used a peanut jar back there and cut a slot in it. Holding pennies, dimes, whatnot in your hand, use buttons. Make sure you have a lot, and they have to use their fingers to work those up and put them in one at a time. People like to cheat, but that's an easy thing to do at home. Finger thumb touching is really good. Doing that, looking at your hand and without. Any kind of small items that you can do just in one hand, moving dice around. We've got those little, I think they're like musical balls or something that you can do also. I've used golf balls. I've even done that with some of my adults. The inchworm with the pencil. Hold your pencil and just try to scoot your fingers up your pencil. Just different things to try to work on in-hand manipulation and finger translation. An app that is really good while I'm on this subject is the Dexteria. It was developed by an occupational therapist, and it's probably one of my favorite ones. And there's a little game on there, and they have to put their thumb on the anchor, and then they move their fingers to different dots. It's really, really good. Magic Piano is also a good one. We'll talk about a few of those later on. And moving into that, the dexterity app, this is also good specific to playing piano. The question that we had was, um, a person had difficulty playing scales, but could do chords. So one of the things that you want to look at initially is just what does your hand position look like, and you want to look at your hand arches because that's one of the key components to playing the piano well, is how your hand looks. So any of these are going to help with that in-hand manipulation, any of those fine motor skills that we talked about to help develop those arches, any kind of strengthening. Um, so first off, look at your hand position and see, what does that look like? And then I had never gotten this question before, so I kind of thought about it. And really for scales and for the piano, I think maybe a visual cue would probably be the best bet just for your thumb. Because really, when you're playing a scale, your thumb is the one that has to make the initial move. So if you have, I don't know, a little sticky note tab or something that you can put on the C, and then you go C, D, E, tuck that thumb over and have a visual cue on the F so that then you can go on. And I think once they get that movement pattern down, it'll just be rote and that they'll be able to transition it to the other scales. Um, Next up, we got hippotherapy and therapeutic riding. It was what age is horse riding therapy recommended to start? There's no specific age limit. I kind of tried to research this because I'd never gotten this question before. Starting age may vary by individual and abilities. I would recommend starting no earlier than 2 years old, really just because they need to have that, neck strength just to hold their head up with all that movement, and they've got to be able to wear a helmet. So just something to think about. But I definitely probably wouldn't start it any earlier than that. The difference in hippotherapy and therapeutic riding, because I think in the question it was just riding therapy, so I just wanted to address that. Hippotherapy is a medical intervention. You have to have a physician's order for it, and it worked in congruency with an OT, PT, or speech therapist that's kind of trained also in horses and how to incorporate the movement into therapy. Therapeutic riding, I think it's just a riding, someone that's trained more on the horse side that works with individuals with disabilities. Just kind of look at that. You're going to have to get a waiver from your doctor anyway, so I think if your physician thinks you're not ready, they might say that because they're going to have to clear you to be able to ride. Other activities associated with riding the horse may be an option if they're not quite ready. I know there's like horsemanship where they just learn about the horse, how to take care of the horse. There was like a carriage riding one. And you could include the other family members. So maybe if you have a brother or sister that wants to do it and kind of go about it that route if you're too young initially or not quite ready. Alrighty, I'm going to hand it over to Christy, and she's going to address the speech questions.
Okay, so the first question that we received was regarding decreasing rate of speech in kiddos. For that, I primarily use verbal and visual cues to decrease a child's rate of speech. During treatment, I'll give them constant reminders for the child to use slow or smooth speech. And that's something that you can do at home just during conversation. Reminding them, oh, don't forget to use your slow speech using their smooth speech as well. However, sometimes that doesn't work and you need to do something more. I use therapy. I will use a pacing board or a metronome. And these both can assist in slowing down a child's rate of speech. A pacing board allows the child to visually observe their rate of speech, really breaking it down into parts. And then a metronome allows a child to auditorily listen to their rate of speech and then adjust accordingly. And this just shows a picture of example of a pacing board to your left and then a metronome to your right that you could use. The next question that I received was regarding oral and feeding skills. The question Read, oral skills do you recommend for a child that has been NPO while they are NPO and once they are cleared to resume feeding? And the answer to that question is very dependent on a child's age. Oral, motor, and feeding milestones are different for every child. For example, a 6 to 12-month-old child would be working on initiating a bite reflex, working on their chewing. Um, for example, feeding therapy for a child of that age range would be using a chewy tube to work to address that. Um, Next, what I've done is I've just put together a list of general feeding treatment for children, consisting of making muscles of the mouth stronger, increasing tongue movement, improving chewing, increasing acceptance of different food and liquids, improving sucking and drinking ability, coordinating the suck, swallow, breathe pattern in infants, and then altering food textures and liquid thickness to ensure safe swallowing. In my opinion, the most important thing that you can do is to allow your child to explore through oral play. And what that does is that it allows your child to explore both textures and flavors of foods and liquids, which will in the end most likely increase their acceptance of these various foods and liquids and later on decrease oral aversions that they might have later on.
Okay. All right. I'll start first. My list is over on our left. But first, I wanted to start out with a website that I really like that anybody can use at home. It's called otplan.com. And I don't know who created it, but you get on there and you can click on, it has like an items list, and you click on different items that you have at home, construction paper, glue, crayons. It has a whole, I don't know, probably like 30 to 50 things that you can choose from. You click what you have at home, and go to the next button, and then you can click on what skill you want to work on. If you want to work on fine motor skills, if you want to work on buttoning, there's a whole list of those. And then it generates a list of activities that you can do at home with what you've entered. So basically, it gives you craft ideas and different activities with whatever you have available at home, centered around whatever skill you put in. It's awesome. I don't know if the OT students out there have figured out about it yet, but it's pretty cool. I tell a lot of my parents about it just because I think it's like a super simple way to get home ideas. The first app on here that I put is Dexteria Junior and Dexteria. Dexteria Junior is made more for our younger kiddos, and Dexteria is for some older kids. The handwriting part on that is a lot harder. But both of those are really good. They have things on there for fine motor skills, for that pincer and tripod prehension, and letter formation, different tracing things. And Dexteria has that additional one for finger isolation that I really liked a lot. The Handwriting Without Tears Wet Dry Try one is also really good, but I will tell you it is very difficult and frustrating for a lot of kids. So probably save that for some of your older kids because I think it's hard. Dora ABCs and Pooh ABCs down there at the bottom are really good ones. Dora is one, I think that's the one, or I'm not sure if it's Pooh, that you also have to make the sound after you do the letter, and you have to record yourself and play it back, and so kids always love that. It's pretty cool. Answers HD, I put that one on there just because it's one that Speech and I both use a lot, and it's more of like a communication device or a way to kind of structure activities, and I just think it's a good one in general that we use in therapy. Letter reflex was one for some of our older kids that have reversals. It's really good for those G's, P's, Q's, the letters that are commonly reversed, and it has a bunch of different activities to help work on that. Visual attention light was the last one that I use a lot. It's really good for some visual scanning and figure ground skills that you really need when you're transitioning into handwriting. I think all of those that I listed, I think you're able to try them for free. Don't quote me on that, but I think they give you a version, or you may, I think Dexteria is a few dollars. But most of them, I know Pooh and Dora kind of give you like a free preview and they'll let you play with before you have to purchase them on the App Store.
The list that I have, the first two are actually what I discussed earlier about slowing down a child's rate of speech. We all know that our kiddos love using the iPad, anything and everything on the iPad. So the first app listed on there, Conversation Pasteboard, is actually a pasteboard that is a free download on the iPad that does the same thing that the visual did in the picture earlier. The child will place their hand on it, have a specific time for each one of the dots. It's really neat. The kids seem to use it and really like it. The second one listed, Pro Metronome, is also a free app. It's just like a metronome that you would have. Just really measures rhythmicality and the melody of a kid's voice, allowing them to auditorily hear that and then adjust their speech accordingly. The next four apps, Meet the Colors, Meet the Shapes, Nouns, and Kangaroo Island, are apps that I use every day with my kiddos. A lot of them use for receptive ID, expressive labeling, you name it. And they're all really, really good apps. I believe all of those are free, or they, like Raina had mentioned earlier, some of them might give you a free trial and then you have to pay just several dollars, if anything. The last four really help increasing a child's vocabulary, which is in turn going to increase their use of speech and language.
Alrighty. One of the last questions that we had was about first steps. It was, we have a 1-year-old and live in a rural area. I'm afraid there will not be a qualified therapist through First Steps in our area. Can we request First Step services in another county if no OT is available? Since we will have to travel, would once or twice monthly be enough? I talked to one of the therapists here that also does First Steps, and she said if you ask them if they can call another OT or speech therapist that works in another county, and if that therapist is willing to travel to your area, then you would be able to get services that way. It all kind of depends on what the therapists are willing to do that are kind of in the surrounding counties, if you can go about it that way. And also, First Steps, if you just can't get First Steps and you need someone to come to your home, you can talk to your doctor and you can actually get a referral just through a home health agency. You might get a therapist, that doesn't specialize in pediatrics like the First Steps therapist would, but they would be able to get you a home health OT or speech therapist or whatnot. And once or twice monthly, I'm not really sure how First Steps does their scheduling. I know sometimes they're once a week or once a month. I think, I don't know, that one's a hard one because it really just kind of depends on a case-by-case basis on what you need. Just like the kids that we see here, some of them might need once a week, some might need twice a week. I think really First Steps is really more about home programs and education, so I think that may be enough. If they can just come in and give you a good hour of things that you can do at home and things that you can, use at home to work with your child, I think it may be enough, initially, just to kind of get you started. And I know that you may also be getting, OT speech, and I don't know exactly if there would be a DI in this case also, but I think you'd probably be covered if once or twice was all that you could do. I think that's it. This last slide is just Christy and I's contact information. We put our emails on here. If you have another question or just something different that you want an OT or a speech perspective on, feel free to email us and we'll try to get back to you. I hope we answered everybody's questions as best that we could. We tried. Thank you for sending them in, and I hope you enjoyed it.
Thanks so much.